As a driving force in the luxury home fragrance industry since 1992, Laura Slatkin's reputation is unparalleled. A true tastemaker and pioneer, she brings to Nest, New York, her classical style, discerning taste, and unique creativity. Outside the world of fragrance, Laura is committed to various causes, most notably autism, as her son David is afflicted with this life-altering disorder. In 2003, along with her husband Harry and closest colleagues, she co-founded Next for Autism, an organization that transforms the national landscape of services for people with autism by strategically designing, launching, and supporting innovative programs. So can you tell us a little bit about David and his nonverbal autism?
Yes. So autism is a spectrum, and unfortunately, Davy sits on sort of the wrong end of the spectrum, if you will. He's not high functioning. He's very, very impaired, severely impaired by autism. So he's never said a single word. He has no verbal language at all. Cognitively, he's very, very weak. And he has aggressive behaviors both to himself and to others. And he's kind of very hyperactive. He's always on the go.
Mm-hmm.
He can rack an obscene amount of steps per day if you let him. He loves to walk, and he doesn't really ever sit down. He's learning to sit down, which is one of his recent accomplishments. And trend we're seeing that he's doing really well now. But he's very hyperactive, so he's very, very impaired by autism.
Yeah. So you started with your husband, Next for Autism, which is an organization that implements programs and helps with research and really advancing and providing great care for those in the autism spectrum disorder. So can you tell us a little bit more about Next for Autism?
Sure.
And what was the mission, or what was your inspiration, I should say, to start it?
So it was interesting because when David was diagnosed with autism, we went to go see this doctor, and she said, it's important that we don't know where this is going. He's very young, but you should research all the schools for individuals with autism and get him signed up because they're very difficult to get into, the good ones. And then she gave me a list of schools to look at. And oddly enough, they were all in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And I had to get in my car, drive over a bridge to find a state-of-the-art superior school for kids with autism. And we just thought that was crazy. And that's what was the impetus for us to start Next for Autism, because we wanted to open a school. And that was an interesting process because, we were grappling with, and then we formed a board and everything, but we were grappling with, should it be a private school? Should it be a public school? What is the structure? Mm-hmm. What's the vehicle? And one day I typed a letter to Joel Klein, our then school chancellor of New York City. And I said that, I had a child with autism. We wanted to start a school for children with autism, and we need your help. And back then we were really using fax machines. So I faxed him the letter, and like within an hour, I got a letter faxed back to me saying, we have over 5,000 kids with autism in the New York City public school system. We need your help.
Wow.
And ultimately, we started a charter school for children with autism. Mm-hmm. But it was then that we really learned the power of partnerships, right? Working with the public school system, rather than it be a private school where we would charge, kids 6 figures, because that's what it ends up costing. Because here's the thing, Harry and I really weren't worried about people like us because we were able to pick up the phone and get what we need to, get where we need to be. But we were really thinking, what about that single mom in Harlem, 3 kids working 3 jobs, one with autism? Mm-hmm. How is she surviving? What is she going to do? If she had a kid like David, how could she possibly support that child?
Right.
there weren't enough hours in the day for her to research and do the work that we successfully did. So we worked very closely with Joel Klein, who was a really terrific advocate for our work, and Bloomberg was mayor at the time, and we opened up a charter school in Harlem, and admission is by lottery, and the kids attend the school that doesn't cost them anything, and we recruited one of the finest directors we could find, and because it's a charter school that's based on the principles of applied behavioral analysis, which is the preferred methodology for educating individuals with autism. So we opened up that charter school, and it took a lot of work. It took 3 years of working with the state and the city because it'd never been done before. And it was a bumpy road, but we survived and we got it done, and we were really, really proud of that. And then from there, we began to realize, again, the power of partnerships and who we could really work with to advance our efforts. So once we had the charter school opened, it then became the question, well, if we're going to impact the New York City public school system, because we wanted our charter school to be a model for the New York City public school system, how do we raise the bar in autism education within the public walls? And I got sitting at my desk one day, and I got a phone call from Jennifer Rabb, the president of Hunter College. And she asked if I would come to her offices to have a conversation, and I did. And she said, we're really interested in autism, and I know you have an autism organization. We don't want to duplicate your efforts. And so the more I started to listen to her talk, the more I was thinking about the lack of educators in the New York City school system, qualified educators. And we ended up partnering with Hunter College out of that conversation and funding them to create a behavioral certification program at Hunter College. And over 300 teachers have passed through that system.
Wow.
And that was our way of, again, this private-public partnership with an institution that had the infrastructure, right, to do the work. And we had the desire, and just working together, we could get it done. And then we realized that through partnerships, we could get where we needed to be much faster. And that became our model going forward. So our next endeavor was to, when Davey was diagnosed with autism, it was funny, but I sent him to Yale to have a further evaluation and to get the information I needed, because none of the universities or hospitals in New York City were really diving into this topic and providing services. And I found that shocking because, I always say that New York City is the most important city in the world. Well, now I get a lot of slack for that. So I say one of the most important. So it's a very sophisticated city, and for it to not have a state-of-the-art autism clinical program, which was very disappointing. So we did a lot of research, and I worked closely with the NIH, determining, which universities were in New York, hospitals, who should we work with. And we chose Columbia University, Cornell, and New York Presbyterian Hospital because they're so deep and rich in the neurosciences. And we called up the president of the hospital at the time, secured a meeting, said we wanted to create a clinical program, develop a center for autism that would provide clinical services, assess, diagnose, and treat individuals with autism across their lifespan. He said, no, we're not doing it. Because, there's no money in autism. It's not like you're going into the hospital and that's where they make their money, in hospital stays. And it's not profitable. And he just couldn't afford to build this thing for us. So I went home and I thought, what if we built the building? What if we funded the deficit? What if we partnered with them? And I went back with a proposal and we laid it out, and they said, yes, let's get going, let's do it. So we built Center for Autism and the Developing Brain in concert with New York Presbyterian Hospital, Cornell, and Columbia University. And we recruited a world-class, renowned autism clinician, Dr. Catherine Lord, who's really the grande dame of autism clinical services. And we started the program. And we had a renovate a building, break ground, build the building, recruit the staff. But we got it started. And, again, it's about choosing institutions that we want to partner with. And that was our story. And it became our sort of mantra.
And
1+1=3.
of course. And now you're also doing more programs. So the program that House Employment and so forth, so the program that David's in,
yeah,
a part of you guys. Yeah, you've expanded, and it's terrific. So as a mom, as an entrepreneur, I don't even know what else I can call you aside from all the work you do with autism. You're a woman of all trades. And that's an understatement. I should say you're remarkable. But as a mom, and I guess you can talk also about Harry, your husband, and Allie is his twin sister. What has David taught you guys in terms of autism, but then also, just about life, because life is not a straight line, as you guys clearly have witnessed and know firsthand.
Yeah. So what has David taught me? So, certainly, we were always philanthropic before the kids were born. But fundraising and being philanthropic became personal once, he was diagnosed with autism. And having gone through, starting this organization and doing some of the things that we did, like I knew nothing about the education system. We're in the business of making candles. Right. I knew nothing about the NIH research, clinical programs, universities, how they're organized, how they operate. Like, for me to get in front of a team of clinicians or scientists or, executives of a hospital and encourage them to do a program and partner with me was very, very intimidating. Because again, I didn't know anything about research or how hospitals and universities operated. And it was daunting to me. But I didn't care because I wanted to get this thing done. I knew in my heart that the community needed it. I knew in my heart I wanted to build programs and make New York City stronger. For those that were affected by autism. All I had was my heart and my passion. And I really didn't care. That it taught me that, not to be so intimidated, to just, if you want to do something, don't worry that you don't know. It's okay, because you're going to bring something to the table. They know. They're the experts, and combined with, your efforts, something beautiful can happen. It really broadened my horizon. This whole thing broadened my horizons and made me a stronger person, and taught me that anything's possible. You can accomplish anything if you put your mind to it. Absolutely. And you surround yourself by smart people.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you guys have surrounded yourself with smart people left and right, regardless of whether it has to do with David or not. And I mean, smart people are at the forefront of everything, and it's important. So lastly, what is one piece of advice you would give to other parents or caregivers that have children who have autism?
Well, I think it's really important for families to create an environment for their children in which they can blossom. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful thing about, when David was diagnosed, with autism, and after like 5 years of intense therapy, they said he was a candidate for residential placement. And when he became really super aggressive, we couldn't keep him at home. So we did place him in a residential program. And I always lived with enormous guilt, knowing that he was there, really because the IEPs that they formed, to take care of David look great on paper. They weren't being executed.
Right.
David really wasn't learning daily living skills and engaging in the community and learning this or that was on his IEP. It was there, but the implementation of those things I felt was never it was lacking.
Mhm.
And now that I see my son in Next for Neighbors, where every single second of the day is a teaching moment to teach him how to do his wash, how to go grocery shopping, how to make pizza, how to mow the lawn. Like every single moment of his day is a teaching moment. And I can see my son blossoming and growing. Like we went to the supermarket the other day and we stood in front of the vegetables. And I said, David, which vegetable do you want? And I pointed, and he pointed to the carrots. And I said, okay, get the carrots and put them in the shopping cart. And he got the carrots and he dropped them in the cart. And he giggled. He giggled because he felt really proud of himself that he had the opportunity to pick which vegetable and put it in the cart. Like this wasn't happening for a long time in his life.
Mhm.
And, this new program has taught me that with the right supports and the right focus and the right program and the consistency of care and the focus, that he can learn and to do things, the simplest things like putting carrots in a supermarket basket. And we can build self-esteem, and whether it's doing whatever throughout the day. For the first time in my life, I feel so happy that my son is now living up to his fullest potential. And at Next for Autism, that's what we want for this adult population. There's over 5.5 million adults with autism, and there is a dearth of services. And the services that do exist, it's more like a warehousing kind of thing. These kids are warehoused. They worry about their health, they worry about their safety, but they don't really focus on taking these individuals, these adults with autism, and having them live as independently as possible, as productively as possible, and as joyful as possible. So that's our future at Next for Autism, to really focus on adults with autism and how do we focus on employment? How do we focus on living, recreation, all of these things, health and well-being, all of these things connecting themselves to the community, like taking David to the pizza parlor so many times that pizza parlor man knows his name,
Right.
like really engaging them in the community. Someone once said to me, and she was so right. She said, if one out of 54 individuals are diagnosed with autism, we should be seeing them in our supermarkets, in our movie theaters, in the park, and in their workplace. And that's kind of an exciting mission for us at Next for Autism. So that's what we're really excited about. So my advice is to really keep pushing till you can get your kid into a situation where you have built the appropriate scaffolds around him so that they become their personal best, and always be thinking, we're always thinking what's next for autism, but what's next for my kid? What could be next for them?
Right. It's great advice. Well, I could talk to you all day. I'd love to
I could talk all day too.
have dinner with you. Oh my goodness, I'd love to. It'd be my honor and so much fun. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me.